The lights were going out across forward operating base Glacier, one amber window at a time. Christmas Eve had arrived in the Arctic Circle, and with it came the rare gift of silence. Elira Hale watched from her station in Communications Hub 7 as soldiers streamed toward the mess hall, their breath forming white clouds in the sub-zero air. Someone had strung colored bulbs along the entrance. Someone else had propped a plastic tree against the sandbags. She turned back to her monitors, the blue glow harsh against her tired eyes. "You sure you don't want to swap out?" Sergeant Marcus Webb stood in the doorway, already wearing his off-duty jacket. "Thompson owes me a shift. You could actually sleep for once." Elira shook her head without looking up. "Someone needs to be here. Besides, I volunteered." "Yeah, well," Marcus hesitated. "Merry Christmas anyway, Hale." The door sealed shut with a pneumatic hiss. She was alone now, surrounded by the gentle hum of equipment and the occasional crackle of distant transmissions. The comm station wrapped around her in a semicircle. 12 monitors, 6 frequency analyzers, 2 satellite uplinks, and 1 encrypted line that connected directly to JSOC. Everything painted in that particular shade of military gray that somehow made you forget what real colors looked like. Elira pulled her coffee closer and began the evening checklist. Temperature readings from the northern observation posts came in clean. Weather satellites showed the predicted geomagnetic storm building over the pole, but nothing the systems couldn't handle. She logged each reading with the mechanical precision of someone who had done this 200 times before. Then the first anomaly appeared. It was subtle. A fractional delay in Echo 7's response time. 0.03 seconds, barely worth noting. But Elira had been listening to these frequencies for 18 months straight, and she knew their rhythms the way a musician knows their instrument. Something was off. She pulled up the spectrum analyzer and watched the waveforms dance across the screen. There, buried beneath the normal chatter, was a pattern. Not random interference, not equipment malfunction, a pattern. "Control, this is Hub 7. She keyed the command channel. "I'm seeing some unusual artifacts on the northern frequencies, requesting permission to run a deep analysis." Static answered her. Then a yawn. "Hub 7. This is Control. It's Christmas Eve and we've got a solar storm rolling in. You're seeing aurora interference. Standard procedure is to log it and monitor." "Sir, I don't think this is..." "Hale," the voice sharpened. "Log it. Monitor it. Those are your orders. Control out." The channel went dead. Elira stared at the waveforms. They pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost biological, deliberate. She'd heard stories about the old operators, the ones who could read Morse code in their sleep and identify aircraft by engine tone alone. They talked about developing a sixth sense, an instinct for wrongness that went beyond training. She was feeling it now. The aurora borealis flickered outside the reinforced windows, painting the ice in shades of green and violet. Beautiful and deadly, like everything else in this frozen corner of the world. The phenomenon played havoc with communications, bending radio waves, and creating ghost signals that appeared and disappeared like whispers in a crowded room. But this wasn't a ghost signal. Elira brought up the secure tactical display. SEAL Team 6 was running a reconnaissance operation in the Silent Ice Valley, a glacial formation 60 kilometers north. The mission was supposed to be routine. Verify coordinates, photograph the terrain, get out before the storm hit. They'd launched at 1400 hours and were scheduled to reach the target zone around midnight. She checked the mission clock. They should be halfway to the valley by now. The anomaly pulsed again on her screen. This time she caught it cleanly. A brief compression in the background noise, the kind created when someone tried to mask their transmission frequency. Amateur hour stuff. The sort of mistake you made when you didn't know you were being monitored by someone who actually understood signal processing. Elira's fingers moved across the keyboard, isolating the frequency and running it through the pattern recognition software. The system churned for 30 seconds, then displayed its analysis. Signal compression detected. Origin, multiple sources. Pattern suggests coordinated transmission protocol. Her blood went cold. Multiple sources meant multiple operators. Coordinated protocol meant military discipline. And the bearing analysis placed them in a semicircle around the northern approach to Silent Ice Valley, right where SEAL Team 6 was heading. She reached for the command channel again, then stopped. They'd already dismissed her once. If she cried wolf based on signal artifacts and Aurora interference, she'd spend the next month filing paperwork and explaining herself to officers who thought communications was just glorified radio operation. But if she was right and said nothing, 12 men would walk into an ambush on Christmas Eve. The monitors flickered as another solar pulse washed across the magnetosphere. Outside, the aurora intensified, bleeding from green to a deep, violent red. Alira had never seen that color before. It looked like the sky was bleeding. She made her decision. 60 kilometers north, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Castellano raised his fist. The 12 men behind him froze instantly, becoming nothing more than white-clad shadows against the endless ice. They'd been moving for 6 hours, and the silent ice valley was finally visible ahead. A massive glacial formation that twisted through the mountains like a frozen river. The locals called it White Echo Valley because of what it did to sound. Acoustic properties unlike anywhere else on Earth. A whisper could carry for miles. A gunshot could vanish completely. The ice walls curved in ways that bent noise back on itself, creating phantom sounds and swallowing real ones. Perfect for an ambush, terrible for the people being ambushed. "Eyes up," Castellano whispered into his comm. "We're entering the mouth." The valley opened before them like a cathedral carved from ice. Walls rose 60 meters on either side, sculpted by wind and time into impossible curves. The aurora painted everything in that strange crimson light, making the ice look like frozen blood. Somewhere above, the geomagnetic storm was intensifying, filling the air with a barely audible hum that made Castellano's teeth ache. Lieutenant Jackson Harper moved up beside him, thermal scope pressed to his face. "I don't like this, Chief. Visibility is dropping and my scope keeps glitching." "Solar radiation," Castellano said, but he didn't like it either. They trained for Arctic operations, practiced in conditions that would kill civilians in minutes. But this felt different. The air itself seemed hostile, pressing down with a weight that had nothing to do with temperature. "Comms check," he ordered. Each operator sounded off in sequence. 12 voices, 12 confirmations. But when Castellano tried to raise base, he got nothing but static laced with that crimson aurora. "Switch to the backup frequency," Harper suggested. Castellano cycled through the channels. Most were dead or corrupted, but on the emergency band, he found a voice. Young, female, tight with urgency. "Team 6, this is Hub 7. Do you copy? Over." "Hub 7, this is 6 Actual. We read you. Signal is weak but stable. Over." There was a pause, and Castellano could almost hear the relief in the operator's voice. "6 Actual. I have indicators of possible hostile activity in your operational area. Recommend extreme caution. Over." Hostile activity. In the middle of nowhere, on Christmas Eve, during a solar storm that should have every sane person indoors. "Hub 7, can you confirm those indicators?" "Over." Negative. 6 Actual. I'm working off signal analysis and pattern recognition. Command has classified it as aurora interference." But another pause. "Chief, I've been doing this for 18 months. This isn't interference. Over." Castellano exchanged glances with Harper. The operator sounded young, maybe mid-20s, but there was something in her voice that reminded him of the old-timers. The ones who'd seen enough to trust their gut over their instruments. "Understood. Hub 7. We'll proceed with enhanced caution. Keep this channel open. 6 Actual out." He gathered his team leaders with hand signals. In the crimson light, their faces looked gaunt, almost skeletal. "We might have hostiles," he said quietly. "Hub 7 is picking up something unusual. I want overwatch positions established every 50 meters. Harper, keep scanning thermals. Davis, I want you monitoring the high ground. If anything moves up there, I want to know before it breathes." They moved forward, but now every shadow seemed to hide a threat. The valley narrowed as they progressed, funneling them toward what the maps called the Throat of Winter, a passage barely 20 meters wide where the ice walls pressed in like a vice. Perfect ambush point. Any operator with basic training could see it, which was why they had to go through it. The objective coordinates were on the other side, and they were already behind schedule. The storm would hit in 3 hours. If they didn't confirm those coordinates tonight, they'd have to scrub the mission and try again next month. Assuming they survived the next 3 hours, the throat loomed ahead, bathed in that impossible red light. Castellano activated his forward camera and transmitted the feed back to Hub 7. Maybe the operator could see something they were missing. Hub 7, 6 actual, transmitting video. Let me know if you spot anything unusual. Over. Static crackled for a moment, then her voice came back. 6 actual, I'm analyzing now. Stand by. They stood by. 12 operators, weapons ready, watching the shadows for movement that might never come. The aurora pulsed overhead like a living thing, and somewhere in the distance, ice groaned as it shifted under its own impossible weight. Castellano had been in combat for 15 years. He'd operated in jungles, deserts, mountains, and cities. He'd been shot at, mortared, ambushed, and nearly killed more times than he could count. But he'd never felt anything quite like this. The valley was too quiet, too empty, too perfect. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded remarkably like the Hub 7 operator was screaming a single word: trap. Alira's hands moved across the keyboards like a concert pianist in the final movement. 3 monitors displayed the SEAL team's helmet camera feeds. 2 more showed the spectrum analysis of every frequency within 100 kilometers. 1 tracked the geomagnetic storm intensifying overhead, and all of them were telling her the same thing. SEAL Team 6 was walking into a kill box. She pulled up the topographic overlay and mapped the signal compressions she detected earlier. They formed a nearly perfect semicircle around the throat of winter, positioned at elevations that would provide overlapping fields of fire. Whoever had set this up knew exactly what they were doing. Control, this is Hub 7. I need to speak with the duty officer immediately. Priority Alpha. The response came back sluggish, annoyed. Hub 7, unless you're reporting an actual attack, Priority Alpha is not authorized for. I'm reporting an imminent attack on SEAL Team 6. Alira cut him off. Multiple hostile signatures detected in their operational area. They are walking into a prepared ambush. Silence. Then a different voice, harder and more alert. Hub 7, this is Major Hendricks. Explain your assessment. Finally, someone who might actually listen. Alira ran through her analysis as quickly as she could without sacrificing accuracy. The signal compressions, the coordinated timing, the positioning around known choke points, the fact that the patterns didn't match any natural phenomenon or friendly transmissions. Major, I've been monitoring communications in this theater for 18 months. I know what aurora interference looks like. This is not that. This is a deliberate communications protocol designed to coordinate multiple elements for hail. Hendrix's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. I'm looking at the same data you are. I see scattered signal artifacts consistent with a Class 3 geomagnetic storm. I see aurora activity at unprecedented levels. What I don't see is definitive proof of hostile forces. Sir, the pattern analysis is based on software that has a 30% false positive rate during solar events, Hendricks interrupted. I've read your file, Specialist Hale. Top marks in signal processing. Youngest operator to achieve Level 4 certification. But you've never deployed to a combat zone. You've never seen what real enemy communications look like. The words hit like a physical blow. Alira felt her face flush, but she forced her voice to remain steady. Sir, with respect, I know what I'm seeing. Those SEALs are in danger. Your concern is noted and logged, Hendricks said. Continue monitoring. If you detect any confirmed hostile transmissions, report immediately. Until then, SEAL Team 6 will proceed with their mission as planned. Control out. The channel went dead. Alira sat in the blue glow of her monitors, hands trembling with frustration and something close to rage. She'd done everything right, followed protocol, provided evidence. And they dismissed her anyway because she was young and hadn't earned her combat badge. On the screen, SEAL Team 6 continued their approach to the throat of winter. She switched back to the emergency frequency. 6 actual. Hub 7, are you still receiving? Over. Hub 7, 6 actual. We copy. What's your status? Over. What could she tell him? That command thought she was seeing ghosts? That her analysis had been dismissed as the overactive imagination of a rookie operator? 6. Actual command has classified my indicators as probable false positives, but I'm maintaining surveillance and will keep this channel active. Over. There was a long pause. Then Castellano's voice came back, quieter now. Hub 7, do you believe it's a false positive? Over. Alira looked at her screens. At the patterns that screamed ambush in a language only she seemed to speak. At the SEAL team moving inexorably toward a point of no return. Negative. 6 actual, she said. I believe you are in extreme danger. Over. Understood. Hub 7. We'll proceed with maximum caution. Keep watching our backs. 6 actual out. The channel stayed open but silent. Elira returned to her analysis, pulling up every tool and database she had access to. There had to be something more, something definitive that even Hendricks couldn't dismiss. That's when she found it. Buried in the auxiliary frequency band, so faint it was barely detectable, was another signal. Not compression this time. Not anything she'd seen before. It was old-school Morse code, the kind nobody used anymore except in training exercises. And it was broadcasting on a frequency that officially didn't exist. Elira's fingers flew across the keyboard, isolating and enhancing the signal. The Morse was clean, professional, repeating the same message every 30 seconds. Eyes on target. Window closing. Execute on my mark. Her mouth went dry. She ran a tracer on the signal source, expecting it to triangulate somewhere in the valley. Instead, the system pointed to a location 6 kilometers away and 1,000 meters up. Point Helix. An abandoned observation post on the highest peak overlooking Silent Ice Valley. Someone was up there. Someone with line of sight to the entire valley. Someone broadcasting in a code that hadn't been used operationally in over a decade. Elira pulled up the historical records for Point Helix, looking for any scheduled activity. The post had been decommissioned 4 years ago, after a catastrophic storm destroyed the access route. Nobody had been up there since. Officially, she enhanced the signal again, this time listening for any identifying markers. Modern military comms were encrypted and anonymous, but Morse code was personal. Every operator had their own rhythm, their own spacing, their own signature in the way they keyed the letters. And this Morse code signature was in the database. When the name appeared on her screen, Elira actually gasped. Call sign. Ghost Widow. Status. Killed in action 4 years ago. The same night Point Helix was decommissioned. Elira stared at the name for 10 full seconds, her brain refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Ghost Widow was a legend, the kind of story old-timers told new recruits to either inspire them or scare them, depending on the mood. A sniper so good she'd become a myth, operating in places that officially didn't exist, taking shots that officially never happened. And she died 4 years ago during a classified operation in these same mountains. Except someone with her exact Morse signature was broadcasting from her last known position. Elira's hands shook as she opened a new encrypted channel, one that bypassed the normal command structure and connected directly to Point Helix's abandoned relay system. It shouldn't work. The equipment should have been stripped years ago. But she had to try. She keyed the Morse slowly, carefully, using the formal protocol for contacting unknown stations. Who is this? Identify. The response came back immediately, crisp and professional. Ghost Widow. Who is this? Elira's heart hammered against her ribs. This was impossible. This was a glitch, a ghost signal from old equipment, a coincidence of frequencies and solar interference that just happened to look like a dead woman's call sign. Or it was real. I'm comms operator Elira Hale. Hub 7. If you're really who you claim to be, you need to confirm. The response took longer this time. 15 seconds that felt like 15 years. Confirmed. Serial number redacted. Operation redacted. Status classification redacted. But I'm watching your SEALs right now, and they're about to die. Elira switched to voice transmission, abandoning the Morse. If you can hear me, speak, now. Static. Then a voice, low and rough, like it hadn't been used in years. I can hear you, Hub 7. Can you hear me? The voice was female, probably late 30s or early 40s. There was an accent there, something Elira couldn't quite place. Southern maybe, or Midwestern. But what struck her most was the absolute calm. No stress, no urgency, just a statement of fact. I hear you, Elira managed. How is this possible? You're supposed to be dead. I am dead, Ghost Widow said. As far as the world knows, and that's how it needs to stay. But right now, your SEAL team is entering the throat of winter, and there are 12 shooters positioned on the ridgeline with overlapping fields of fire. 2 RPG teams covering the exits, 1 sniper on the north wall who's almost as good as I used to be. Elira pulled up the tactical display, her mind racing. Why should I believe you? Why are you here? Because I never left, Ghost Widow said simply. I've been watching these mountains for 4 years, and 3 days ago, I watched a team of professionals spend 8 hours setting up a perfect ambush. They knew exactly where your seals would enter the valley. They knew exactly when. And they've been waiting. Command says my signal analysis is showing false positives. Command is wrong. There was something almost like amusement in Ghost Widow's voice. But you already knew that. That's why you're talking to a dead woman instead of following orders. Elira looked at the monitors showing SEAL Team 6. They were 200 meters from the throat now, moving in textbook formation, completely unaware of the crosshairs settling on them from a dozen different angles. What do you want me to do? She asked. Nothing, Ghost Widow said. You've done your job. You saw the trap. You warned them. Now it's my turn. Your turn to do what? What I do best. Hub 7. I'm going to take the shot that saves their lives. Elira's breath caught. You're going to engage? You'll expose your position. If you're trying to stay hidden. 12 good men about to die versus me staying hidden? Ghost Widow interrupted. That's not even a choice. But I need something from you. Name it. Wind data. The instruments up here died 2 years ago, and at this range, in these conditions, I need precision down to the 10th of a meter per second. Can you give me that? Elira was already pulling up the meteorological sensors. I can give you wind speed and direction at ground level, but the aurora is causing massive atmospheric disturbances. The readings might be off. Then adjust for the white echo effect, Ghost Widow said. You know what that is, right? Elira thought fast, pulling up everything she'd learned about the valley's acoustic properties. The ice walls create compression zones. Wind moves faster at ground level and slower at altitude, opposite of normal conditions. Close enough. I need you to calculate the inversion layer and give me corrected wind data for 800 meters above the valley floor. That's my firing position. 800 meters. One shot. Through unstable atmosphere, during a geomagnetic storm, with crimson aurora playing havoc with every instrument. This is impossible, Elira whispered. No, Ghost Widow corrected. This is Tuesday. Now give me that wind data, Specialist Hale. We're out of time. The numbers scrolled across Elira's screens like a waterfall of data, each calculation feeding into the next. She'd never done atmospheric modeling this complex, never tried to account for the weird physics of the silent ice valley while a solar storm bent reality overhead. But she was doing it now because 12 men she'd never met were about to walk into a killing zone, and a woman who was supposed to be dead was their only chance. Ground wind speed 3.2 meters per second, northwest, Elira said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. Temperature minus 32 Celsius. Relative humidity 18%. Copy that, Ghost Widow responded. Keep going. Elira pulled up the inversion calculations, factoring in the valley's unique properties. The ice walls created a thermal gradient that defied normal atmospheric rules. Cold air sank and pooled at the bottom while warmer air rose along the walls, creating convection currents that shifted by the minute. Predicted wind at 800 meters, 2.7 meters per second, north-northwest, but it's unstable. You could see variations of plus or minus 0.5 meters in either direction. Accuracy? 70% confidence. Ghost Widow was silent for a moment. Make it 90. I can't just... Yes, you can, the sniper interrupted. You're running pattern recognition on 18 months of data. Your brain knows these mountains better than the satellites do. Stop thinking like a technician and start thinking like an operator. What does your gut tell you? Elira closed her eyes, letting the numbers fade into intuition. She'd watched these weather patterns every single night for a year and a half. She knew how the aurora affected wind speed. She knew how the valley breathed. 2.6 meters per second, she said, opening her eyes. North-northwest, 90% confidence. There it is. Good work, Hub 7. On the tactical display, SEAL Team 6 had reached the entrance to the throat of winter. Chief Castellano had his team in a textbook combat spread, weapons up, moving with the fluid precision that came from thousands of hours of training. They looked ready for anything. Except the trap they couldn't see. Elira switched to the emergency frequency. 6, actual. Hub 7, urgent. You need to halt immediately. I have confirmation of hostile forces in prepared positions surrounding your location. This is not a drill. Over. Static crackled, then Castellano's voice cut through. Hub 7, we copy your warning, but we're committed now. The storm's closing our exit window. We push through, or we spend the night in the valley. Over. 6, actual. Spending the night is preferable to walking into an ambush. Please reconsider. Over. Hub 7, Castellano started. Then, his voice changed. Wait. Harper's thermal is picking up something. Stand by. Elira held her breath, watching the helmet cameras. The view swung to the north wall of the valley, and even through the aurora interference, she could see it. Heat signatures. Multiple positions. Exactly where Ghost Widow had said they'd be. Contact. Harper's voice cut across the channel. Multiple heat signatures on the ridgeline. We are potentially compromised. The SEAL team dropped into combat positions instantly, but they were caught in the open, exposed on 3 sides. The throat of winter had become exactly what Elira had feared, a killing box with no escape. Ghost Widow, Elira transmitted on the secure channel. They've spotted the hostiles. It's going to kick off any second. I know, came the calm reply. I'm watching the lead shooter. He's got his finger on the trigger. When he fires, they all fire. That's the protocol. Can you stop him? Not before he gets his shot off. But I can make sure it's the only shot that matters. Elira didn't understand, but there was no time to ask. On the SEAL channel, Castellano was calling for immediate extraction, but the response from command was the same bureaucratic delay that had doomed them from the start. Then everything happened at once. The lead hostile squeezed his trigger. Elira saw the muzzle flash through the thermal imaging, saw the round trace toward the SEAL position. And Ghost Widow fired, but not at the shooter. The round traveled 800 meters through unstable air, through the crimson aurora that warped the very fabric of the sky, through conditions that should have made the shot impossible. It struck a thin sheet of ice, 60 meters above the hostile positions with surgical precision. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, physics took over. The ice sheet, already stressed by weeks of thermal cycling, fractured along its entire length. The crack propagated faster than sound, racing through the frozen wall like lightning through glass. And then the entire section came down. Not a simple collapse, a controlled avalanche. 300 tons of ice crashed onto the ridgeline where the shooters had positioned themselves. The RPG teams vanished under the cascade. The sniper on the north wall lost his perch as the vibration shook loose his entire position. The ambush evaporated in a roar of breaking ice and compressed air. And SEAL Team 6 stood frozen in shock, realizing they should have been dead. The silence after the avalanche was absolute. Even through the radio, Elira could feel it, that suspended moment when the world holds its breath and waits to see if death has finished its work. Then Castellano's voice cut through, sharp with command authority. Harper, Davis, secure the flanks! Michaels, Jennings, check for remaining threats. Nobody moves until we clear this valley. Elira watched the helmet cameras as the SEAL team deployed with machine-like efficiency. They moved through the positions, checking for survivors, securing weapons, confirming that the threat had been eliminated as thoroughly as 300 tons of ice could eliminate anything. Hub 7, 6 actual, Castellano transmitted, his voice tight. We're secure, no casualties on our end, but somebody just saved our lives and I'd really like to know who. Elira glanced at her secure channel to Ghost Widow. The line was still active, but silent. 6 actual, that's classified, Elira said carefully, but you have a guardian angel watching over the valley. Suggest you extract immediately before the storm closes in. Copy that, Hub 7, we're moving. A pause, and tell our angel we owe her a drink. Her? Castellano's voice carried a note of surprise. Elira winced. She'd just violated operational security without meaning to. Before she could respond, Ghost Widow's voice came through on the secure channel. It's all right, Hub 7. Let them know. They've earned that much. Ghost Widow says Elira started on the main channel, then stopped. How exactly did you explain that a dead woman had just performed a miracle shot? Ghost Widow? Castellano said slowly. As in the Ghost Widow? The sniper who died 4 years ago in these mountains? Reports of my death were only slightly exaggerated. Ghost Widow transmitted directly onto the seal frequency, her voice crackling through the interference. 6 actual. You have 30 minutes before the storm makes extraction impossible. I suggest you use them wisely. Ma'am, Castellano said, and Alira heard the respect in his voice. With all due respect, I'd like to extract you as well. If you're alive, you need to come home. I am home, Chief, and I'm exactly where I need to be. Ma'am, Castellano. Ghost Widow's voice carried an edge now. You're a good operator. Don't make me regret saving your life by wasting time on an argument you can't win. Get your men out of my valley. There was a long silence. Then Castellano's sigh came through clearly. Yes, ma'am. 6 actual out. Alira watched the SEAL team begin their tactical withdrawal, moving fast but carefully through the treacherous terrain. The aurora pulsed overhead, that impossible crimson bleeding across the sky like a wound in reality itself. Why did you do that? Alira asked on the secure channel. You exposed yourself. They'll report this. Command will send teams to find you. Let them try, Ghost Widow said. I've been avoiding satellite surveillance and patrol patterns for 4 years. A few more months won't make a difference. But why stay hidden? If you're alive, you could come back. Resume your career. You're a legend. They'd welcome you. Would they? Ghost Widow interrupted. Would they welcome the questions about why I faked my death? About what I know and what I saw that made me disappear? About the operation that was so classified, they buried it under 6 layers of redaction and 3 false reports? Alira felt the temperature in the room drop despite the heating system. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that 4 years ago, I was ordered to take a shot that would have started a war. And when I refused, they tried to make sure I couldn't tell anyone about it. Ghost Widow's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something cold and hard. The storm that destroyed Point Helix. That was supposed to destroy me too. But I'm harder to kill than they expected. You're saying your own people tried to eliminate you? Not my people. Never my people. But there are others in the system. Others who see operators like us as tools to be used and discarded. A pause. I couldn't prove anything. Couldn't expose them without getting more people killed. So I did the only thing I could. I died. And I stayed dead. Alira processed this, her mind racing through the implications. And tonight, you risked all of that to save the SEAL team. Some things are worth the risk, Ghost Widow said simply. Those men down there, they're the real deal. They fight because it's right, not because someone ordered them to. I wasn't about to let them die, because I was too scared to take a shot. On the monitors, SEAL Team 6 was making good progress toward the extraction point. The storm was intensifying, but they'd make it out before it became impassable. They'd live to fight another day, never fully knowing how close they'd come to ending up as frozen statistics in a classified after-action report. What happens now? Alira asked. Now you do your job, Ghost Widow said. You monitor your frequencies. You watch over the operators who come through this valley. And if you see another trap being set, you do exactly what you did tonight. You trust your instincts, you raise hell, and you don't let anyone tell you you're wrong when you know you're right. And you? I keep watching. Keep waiting. And maybe someday, the people who tried to kill me will make a mistake. When they do, I'll be ready. The secure channel crackled with interference as the geomagnetic storm reached its peak. The aurora flared so bright it cast shadows through the reinforced windows of Hub 7, painting everything in shades of crimson and violet. Ghost Widow, Alira said quickly, afraid the connection would drop. I need to know, the shot you took tonight, that wasn't just luck, was it? You calculated exactly where to hit the ice to bring down that avalanche. I've been watching this valley for 4 years, Hub 7. I know every stress fracture, every weak point, every place where the ice is ready to fail. I just needed someone smart enough to give me accurate wind data. A hint of warmth entered her voice. You did good tonight, Specialist Hale. Better than good. You saved those men just as much as I did. I just read the instruments. No, Ghost Widow corrected. You read the instruments, and you trusted what they were telling you, even when everyone else said you were wrong. That's not just technical skill. That's courage. Don't ever lose that. The channel degraded further, Ghost Widow's voice breaking up into fragments. Wait, Alira said. "Will I hear from you again?" The response came through in pieces, scattered by the storm. "If you need me. Watching. Keep the faith. Hub 7. Then static claimed the channel completely. Elira sat in the blue glow of her monitors, surrounded by the quiet hum of equipment and the distant howl of Arctic wind. Outside, the aurora blazed like the sky itself was on fire. Inside, she felt something shift in her chest, something fundamental. She'd started this shift as a comms operator doing routine monitoring on Christmas Eve. She was ending it as someone who'd helped avert a massacre and made contact with a ghost. The door to Hub 7 hissed open. Major Hendricks stood in the entrance, his face grim. "Specialist Hale," he said, "I need you to compile a full report on everything that happened tonight. Every transmission, every analysis, every decision you made." Elira straightened in her chair. "Yes, sir." Hendricks studied her for a long moment. "SEAL Team 6 says you saved their lives, that you identified the ambush when no one else did." "I had help, sir." "So I heard." Hendricks stepped into the room. "You're aware that Ghost Widow is listed as Kia, correct?" "Yes, sir." "And you're aware that claiming to have had contact with a dead operator is going to generate a significant amount of attention?" Elira met his gaze steadily. "I'm aware, sir. But I'm also aware that 12 men are alive because someone, whoever she was, took an impossible shot through a geomagnetic storm and brought down that avalanche with surgical precision. The SEAL team's helmet cameras recorded the whole thing. The evidence speaks for itself." Hendricks was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Write your report, Specialist. Include everything." "And Hale?" "Yes, sir." "Good work tonight. Really good work." He left, and Elira turned back to her monitors. On the tactical display, SEAL Team 6 had reached the extraction point. The helicopters were already inbound, racing the storm. They would make it home for Christmas. 3 hours later, Elira was still typing. Her report had grown to 37 pages and counting, every detail documented with the precision that had made her the youngest Level 4 certified operator in the command. She described the signal anomalies, the pattern analysis, the calculations she'd run to provide wind data through an atmospheric inversion during a geomagnetic storm. She described everything, except the parts that would get Ghost Widow killed. The secure channel to Point Helix remained silent. Elira had tried reconnecting twice, but the relay system appeared to be completely offline now. Either the storm had finally destroyed the old equipment, or Ghost Widow had shut it down deliberately. Either way, the ghost had returned to being a ghost. Still at it? Marcus Webb poked his head through the door, looking rumpled and half asleep. "It's 0400. Hale. You've been on shift for 14 hours. Almost done," Elira said without looking up. Marcus came in and leaned against the console, reading over her shoulder. "Jesus, you really did call in a strike from a dead woman." "I called in assistance from an unidentified operator at an abandoned position," Elira corrected. "The identity of that operator remains unconfirmed." "Right, unconfirmed," Marcus grinned. "Except for the part where she used Ghost Widow's exact call sign, transmitted from Ghost Widow's last known position, and executed a shot that only Ghost Widow could have made." "Coincidence," Elira said, deadpan. "Sure, and I'm Santa Claus," Marcus sobered. "Seriously though, what you did tonight, that took guts. Going against command, trusting your analysis when everyone said you were wrong, that's not easy. Neither is watching good people die when you could have prevented it." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess not." He straightened up. "Thompson's here to relieve you. Go get some sleep. You've earned it." Elira saved her report and encrypted it with her personal authentication code, 37 pages that told the truth while carefully avoiding certain lethal details. It was a masterpiece of technical writing and strategic omission. She wondered if Ghost Widow would approve. The walk back to her quarters took her past the chapel, where someone had left the Christmas lights burning. Through the frosted windows, she could see a small tree decorated with handmade ornaments and strings of popcorn. It looked almost peaceful. Her bunk was exactly as she'd left it 12 hours ago. Military neat, impersonal, the quarters of someone who'd learned to live out of a duffel bag. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off her boots, feeling the exhaustion hit her all at once. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. Probably the duty officer requesting clarification on some detail of her report. But when she opened it, the sender field was blank. No name, no authentication code, no routing information. The kind of message that shouldn't be able to exist within the military's encrypted communication system. The message itself was short. "Well done, Hub 7. Keep watching the valleys. They need operators like you, GW." Alira stared at the screen for a full minute, then deleted the message. It vanished without a trace, as though it had never existed. Just like its sender. She lay back on her bunk and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying the night's events, the signal anomalies, the desperate calculations, the sound of Ghost Widow's voice cutting through the static with absolute calm. "Send me the wind." 4 words that had changed everything. Somewhere in the mountains, in an abandoned observation post that officially didn't exist, a woman who officially didn't exist was probably packing up her gear, covering her tracks, disappearing back into the legend she'd become. But she'd been real tonight. Real enough to save 12 lives. Real enough to trust a junior comms operator she'd never met with calculations that meant the difference between a perfect shot and a tragic miss. Real enough to send one final message to the operator who'd believed in her. Alira's tablet chimed again. This time, it was definitely the duty officer, requesting her presence for a debriefing at 0800. She acknowledged the message and set her alarm, knowing she'd only get about 3 hours of sleep. It would have to be enough. Outside her window, the aurora was fading. The crimson had given way to the more familiar green and violet, the geomagnetic storm passing as quickly as it had arrived. By morning, the sky would be back to its normal Arctic darkness, as though the impossible events of Christmas Eve had never happened. But Alira would remember. She would remember the patterns in the static, the voice from a ghost, and the shot that saved 12 lives. She would remember that sometimes the instruments were right and the experts were wrong, and that courage meant trusting your analysis even when everyone told you to stand down. And she would keep watching the valleys, just as Ghost Widow had asked. Because somewhere out there, in the frozen mountains and impossible terrain, there were operators who needed someone in Hub 7 who knew how to read the signals that others missed. Someone who understood that the most important transmissions often came from the places that didn't officially exist. Someone who knew that legends weren't always dead. The debriefing room was small and windowless, designed to prevent electronic surveillance and create an atmosphere of claustrophobic honesty. Alira sat across from Major Hendricks and 2 officers she didn't recognize. A colonel with intelligence insignia and a civilian woman whose credentials identified her as Department of Defense. Nothing more specific. They'd been at it for 90 minutes, dissecting every second of her shift, every decision she'd made, every word she'd exchanged with both SEAL Team 6 and the mysterious operator at Point Helix. "Let's go back to the moment you first detected the signal anomalies," the colonel said, his tone flat and professional. "You stated in your report that the pattern suggested coordinated hostile communications. Walk me through that analysis again." Alira had walked through it 4 times already, but she did it again. The compression signatures, the timing intervals, the frequency distribution that matched known tactical protocols. She spoke with the precision of someone who knew her analysis was bulletproof, even if her instincts couldn't be quantified. "And command rejected your assessment," the civilian woman said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. I was told the signatures were consistent with Aurora interference and instructed to log and monitor rather than escalate." "But you escalated anyway," Hendricks said. "I maintained the emergency channel with SEAL Team 6 and continued my analysis," Alira corrected carefully. "When I detected the secondary signal from Point Helix, I deemed it relevant to the tactical situation." "The secondary signal," the colonel repeated, "which you claim came from an operator using the call sign Ghost Widow." "An operator using that call sign, yes, sir. I made no claims about the operator's actual identity. But you provided tactical support to this operator," the civilian woman pressed. "Wind data, atmospheric calculations. You enabled what was effectively a combat engagement by an unidentified shooter." Alira met her gaze steadily. "I provided meteorological data that helped prevent the massacre of 12 American Special Operations personnel. If that was wrong, ma'am, then I'll own that mistake. But I'd make the same choice again." Silence filled the room. Then Hendricks leaned back in his chair, something that might have been respect flickering in his eyes. "Specialist Hale," the colonel said, You're aware that Ghost Widow was involved in highly classified operations before her death. Operations that remain sealed under national security protocols. I'm aware that's the official record, sir. The official record, the colonel continued, will remain the official record. Do you understand what I'm saying? Elira understood perfectly. They were telling her to let the ghost stay dead, to file her report and ask no more questions, to accept that some truths were too dangerous to pursue. Yes, sir, I understand. The civilian woman opened a folder and slid a document across the table. This is a non-disclosure agreement specific to the events of last night. You'll sign it before you leave this room. You will not discuss the Point Helix signal with anyone not cleared for this debriefing. You will not speculate about the identity of the operator who provided supporting fire. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am. Elira signed the document without reading it. She knew what it said: speak and face prosecution, stay silent and be protected. The same deal offered to anyone who stumbled across secrets that weren't meant to be found. That said, Hendricks added, your performance last night was exemplary. You identified a legitimate threat when your tools and your superiors told you there was nothing there. You maintained communication with SEAL Team 6 under extreme conditions, and you provided critical support that directly contributed to their survival. He slid another document across the table. This one had her name at the top and a list of commendations below. You're being promoted to Senior Specialist and assigned to the new Threat Analysis Division we're establishing at Northern Command. Your job will be to do exactly what you did last night. Find the patterns nobody else sees and raise hell when you find them. We need operators who trust their instincts. Congratulations. Elira stared at the promotion orders, genuinely surprised. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Hendricks said. The hours are terrible, and everyone will think you're paranoid. But you'll have the authority to be paranoid officially. That's got to count for something. The debriefing ended 20 minutes later. Elira walked out into the pale Arctic sunlight that passed for morning, feeling like she'd just been processed through some bureaucratic machinery that had chewed her up and reassembled her into something slightly different. She was still Elira Hale, still a comms operator or senior specialist now, but she was also something else. Someone who'd spoken with a ghost and lived to tell about it, even if she could never actually tell about it. Her tablet chimed. This time the message was from the SEAL Team's senior chief, brief and professional. Hub 7. The team wanted me to pass along their thanks. You saved our lives. If you ever need anything, you call. We don't forget. Castellano. Elira saved the message, knowing it was probably the closest thing to recognition she'd ever get for the real work she'd done that night. The official record would show that she'd detected hostile signatures and maintained communications. It wouldn't mention Ghost Widow. It wouldn't mention the impossible shot through the Crimson Aurora. Some victories had to remain secret. She was halfway back to her quarters when her personal comm unit chirped with an incoming signal on a frequency that shouldn't exist. She ducked into an empty supply room and accepted the connection. Hub 7. Ghost Widow's voice crackled through the interference. I heard about your promotion. Well done. How did you? Elira started, then stopped. Of course, Ghost Widow could monitor military communications. The woman had been doing it for 4 years from a position that was supposed to be abandoned. I wanted to say thank you, Ghost Widow continued. Not many operators would have taken the risk you took, trusting a ghost, going against command. You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, Elira said. Maybe. But you saved those men just as much as I did. More, even. I just pulled the trigger. You gave them the warning they needed to survive what came after. They're giving me an NDA, telling me to forget about Point Helix, forget about you, file my report, and move on. Good, Ghost Widow said, surprising her. That's what you should do. But, listen to me. Hub 7, the people who tried to kill me 4 years ago are still out there. They're still dangerous. And if they think I have allies, think I'm building some kind of network, they'll come after you too. The best thing you can do for both of us is sign your NDA and let me fade back into legend. Elira wanted to argue. Wanted to say that Ghost Widow deserved better than living as a ghost in the mountains. But she knew it wasn't her call to make. Will I hear from you again? She asked. Maybe. If another trap gets set in my valley. If another team needs saving. A pause. Or maybe I'll just watch from the shadows and know that there's someone in Hub 7 who understands what the instruments are really saying. Someone who won't ignore the patterns just because they don't fit the official narrative. I won't ignore them, Alira promised. I know you won't. That's why I trusted you. The signal started to degrade, Ghost Widow's voice breaking up. Keep watching the valleys, Specialist Hale. Keep trusting your instincts, and Merry Christmas. The connection dropped before Alira could respond. She stood in the supply room for a long moment, holding the comm unit and listening to the silence. Outside, the base was coming to life as the day shift took over. Somewhere in the mountains, a woman who didn't exist was probably already moving to a new position, covering her tracks, ensuring that the ghost stayed a ghost. But Alira knew the truth. She'd heard the voice, seen the impossible shot, felt the connection between two operators who trusted each other with lives and secrets. Ghost Widow was real. And somewhere in the Arctic night, she was still watching. 6 months passed. Alira settled into her new role at the Threat Analysis Division with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. Her team was small, just 4 analysts and her, but they had access to every signal intelligence feed from the Arctic theater. Her job was simple: find the patterns that predicted danger before it manifested. She was very good at it. 3 times in those 6 months, she'd identified hostile reconnaissance operations before they could develop into actual threats. Twice, she'd caught supply movements that indicated preparations for ambush. Once she'd detected a communications pattern that revealed a planned attack on a remote outpost, giving the defenders time to reinforce and repel the assault. Her superiors called her paranoid. Her peers called her lucky. The operators in the field just called her when they needed someone to watch their backs. But through it all, Point Helix remained silent. Alira monitored the frequencies every night, but the ghost stayed a ghost. No Morse code, no encrypted transmissions, no impossible shots through geomagnetic storms. Sometimes she wondered if she'd imagined it all. If Ghost Widow had been nothing more than a stress-induced hallucination, a pattern she'd wanted to see so badly that her brain had constructed it from random static. Then she'd remember the sound of that voice, calm, professional, absolutely certain, and she'd know it had been real. The summons to Major Hendrick's office came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier rather than electronic message. That alone told her something significant was happening. In the modern military, paper meant secrets. Hendricks wasn't alone when she arrived. The same civilian woman from the Christmas Eve debriefing sat in the corner, and Chief Petty Officer Castellano stood by the window, looking uncomfortable in his dress uniform. "Specialist Hale," Hendricks said, "thank you for coming. Please close the door." Alira did, her tactical awareness ramping up automatically. This wasn't a routine meeting. 6 weeks ago, the civilian woman began without preamble. SEAL Team 10 conducted a reconnaissance operation in the Frozen Teeth Range, approximately 80 kilometers north of Silent Ice Valley. They were ambushed. 4 men died. 2 were critically wounded. The survivors reported that they would have lost everyone if not for sniper fire from an elevated position that eliminated 3 of the hostile shooters and provided covering fire for their withdrawal. Alira's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "I wasn't monitoring that operation, ma'am." "No, you weren't," the woman agreed, "because it wasn't in your assigned area of responsibility." But the survivors described the supporting fire as coming from an impossible range through adverse weather conditions, with precision that suggested advanced tactical knowledge of the terrain. Castellano spoke up for the first time. "They said it was Ghost Widow, specialist. Said they heard her call sign transmitted just before the shooting started. Said she saved their lives just like she saved ours." And 3 weeks after that, Hendricks continued, a Marine reconnaissance team got pinned down in the Shattered Ridge. Same story. Impossible shots, call sign Ghost Widow. Everyone survived. The civilian woman leaned forward. "There's a pattern here, Specialist Hale, and patterns are your specialty. So I'm going to ask you directly, is she real?" Alira considered her options. The NDA she'd signed explicitly prohibited discussing Ghost Widow. But these were cleared personnel, and they were asking questions that suggested they already knew the answers. "I believe someone is operating in those mountains," she said carefully. "Someone with advanced sniper training and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Whether that someone is actually Ghost Widow or just using her call sign, I can't confirm." "Can't or won't?" the woman asked. "Both, ma'am." Hendricks almost smiled. 2 days ago, we received intelligence that a high-value target will be moving through the Silent Ice Valley next week. Someone important enough that we're considering a direct action mission to capture or eliminate. The problem is that the valley is essentially a fortress. Any approach would be detected. Any assault would turn into a bloodbath. Unless, Castellano said quietly, we had overwatch from someone who knows every inch of that terrain. Someone who's already proven she can execute impossible shots through impossible conditions. Illyra felt her stomach drop. You want to recruit Ghost Widow. We want to establish contact, the civilian woman corrected. We want to determine if she's an asset or a threat. And we want to do it through someone she's already demonstrated trust in. You want me to contact her? We want you to try, Hendricks said. You're the only person she's voluntarily communicated with in 4 years. The only person who knows her frequencies and protocols. If anyone can bring her in from the cold, it's you. Illyra thought about the woman who'd saved 12 lives and then vanished. The woman who'd faked her death to escape something so dangerous she'd chosen exile over exposure. The woman who'd told her explicitly to stay away, to let the ghost stay a ghost. And if she refuses? Illyra asked. Then we pursue other options, the civilian woman said. Options that might involve treating her as a hostile operator in an unsecured area. Options nobody wants, but might become necessary. The threat was clear. Cooperate or we'll hunt her down. Illyra looked at Castellano, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. Chief, what do you think? You've met her, in a manner of speaking. I think she saved my life and the lives of my team, Castellano said. I think she's operating alone in some of the most hostile terrain on Earth, surviving conditions that would kill most operators in days. And I think if we try to force her to do anything, we'll either fail and lose good people in the attempt, or succeed and lose whatever goodwill might exist. He paused. But I also think someone needs to at least ask. Give her the option to come in on her own terms. Hendricks nodded. That's what we're proposing. A conversation, not a confrontation. An offer, not an order. You make contact. You present the option of cooperation. And if she says no, we back off and find another way. Do I have your word on that, sir? Illyra asked. That if she refuses, you'll leave her alone? The civilian woman and Hendricks exchanged glances. Then Hendricks said, you have my word that we won't pursue her for the purpose of recruiting her for this specific operation. Beyond that, I can't make promises. There are questions about Ghost Widow that go above my clearance level. It wasn't the guarantee Illyra wanted, but it was probably the best she'd get. When would this contact happen? She asked. Tonight, the civilian woman said. The HVT moves in 72 hours. We need an answer before then. Illyra took a deep breath, thinking about trust and betrayal, about duty and friendship, about the ghost in the mountains who'd asked her to keep watching the valleys. I'll try, she said, but I can't promise she'll respond, and I won't pressure her. If she says no, that's final. Understood, Hendricks said. You'll have access to the full secure comm suite, whatever you need to make contact. Illyra nodded and stood to leave. As she reached the door, Castellano called out, Specialist? She turned. Tell her we're grateful, the chief said. Whatever else you say, make sure she knows that. Illyra waited until 2300 hours, when the base had quieted to its night rhythm and the aurora was just beginning to paint the sky. She'd commandeered Hub 7 again, sent Marcus home early, and locked the door behind her. The secure comm suite was exactly as she remembered it, though someone had updated the software and added new encryption protocols. She bypassed most of them, reverting to the older systems that Ghost Widow would recognize, and began scanning the frequencies around Point Helix. Nothing. She tried the old Morse code protocols, tapping out the standard contact sequence. Still nothing. For 2 hours she searched, cycling through every frequency and protocol she could think of. The aurora intensified overhead, that familiar crimson bleeding into the green, and still Ghost Widow remained silent. Maybe she'd moved on. Maybe she'd left the mountains entirely. Maybe she'd never existed at all, except in the desperate imagination of a junior operator who needed to believe in miracles. Then, at 01:23, her screen flickered. A message appeared. Text only, routing through so many proxies that tracing it would be impossible. I told you to let me stay dead, Hub 7. Illyra's fingers flew across the keyboard. They're asking me to contact you. Offering cooperation, not capture. They're lying. Maybe. But Chief Castellano is involved. He wanted me to tell you they're grateful. A long pause. Then, what do they want? Elira explained the situation as concisely as possible. The HVT, the impossible approach, the need for someone who knew the valley. She was careful to present it as a request, not a demand. And if I refuse? Ghost Widow asked. Elira typed the truth. They say they'll back off. But there are questions above Hendricks' clearance level. I can't guarantee they'll leave you alone permanently. Another pause, longer this time. Elira watched the Aurora pulse and shift, wondered what Ghost Widow was thinking in her frozen eyrie. You're in an impossible position, the message finally read. They're using you to get to me because they know I trust you. That's not fair to either of us. Nothing about this is fair, Elira agreed. But I promised I'd ask, so I'm asking. Will you help? Why should I? I walked away from all of this. I earned my death and my peace. Because there are operators who need you, Elira typed. Because you're still the best. And because maybe, if you help on your own terms, you can control the narrative. Cooperation beats capture. The longest pause yet. Elira counted her heartbeats, wondering if she'd just made the worst mistake of her career or saved a ghost from a hunter's bullet. I'll do it, Ghost Widow finally responded. But on my conditions. I provide overwatch only. I do not infiltrate. I do not extract. I take my shots, and I vanish. And when it's done, they forget they ever contacted me. I'll relay that, Elira promised. And Hub 7? Yes? This is the last time. After this operation, I go dark completely. No more saving SEAL teams. No more Guardian Angel. I disappear for real. Make sure they understand that. Elira felt something twist in her chest. I understand. You're a good operator, Elira Hale. Better than good. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. Don't let them use your loyalty as a weapon. The use of her actual name hit harder than Elira expected. In 6 months of indirect contact, Ghost Widow had never once called her anything but Hub 7. Thank you, Elira typed, not sure what else to say. Frequency Omega 7, 0500, mission date, I'll be listening, have your people ready to coordinate. And Elira? Yes? Keep watching the valleys, someone has to. The connection dropped. Elira sat in the blue glow of her monitors, feeling like she'd just done something irrevocable. She'd brought the ghost out of hiding, made her visible to people who might not honor their promises, used trust as currency in a transaction that could cost Ghost Widow everything. But she'd also given 12 more operators a chance to come home alive. She compiled her report, encrypted it to the highest level, and sent it directly to Hendricks. Then she sat back and watched the aurora, that impossible crimson painting the sky like a wound that wouldn't heal. The operation went down 4 days later. Elira wasn't involved directly. She monitored from Hub 7, tracking frequencies and maintaining the tactical network, but she heard the reports as they came in. The HVT had been intercepted in the Silent Ice Valley exactly as predicted. SEAL Team 6 had approached from the south, while Ghost Widow provided overwatch from Point Helix. 3 hostile bodyguards had been eliminated with 3 shots before they even knew they were under fire. The HVT had been captured without friendly casualties. Mission success, complete and total. And Ghost Widow had vanished before anyone could attempt to locate her position, leaving behind nothing but empty frequency bands and the legend of 3 perfect shots through a snowstorm. Hendricks called Elira into his office the next morning. She kept her word, he said without preamble. Provided exactly the support we needed and nothing more. Professional, precise, perfect. He paused. And now she's gone. We've had surveillance satellites and ground teams searching for 48 hours. There's no sign she was ever at Point Helix. She's had 4 years to learn how to disappear, sir. So it seems. Hendricks studied her carefully. Did she say anything else? Anything off the record? Elira thought about Ghost Widow's final message. Keep watching the valleys. She said this was the last time, Elira told him. That she's going dark permanently. She wants to be left alone. Do you believe her? I believe she wants to be left alone, sir. Whether that's actually possible is another question. Hendricks nodded slowly. For what it's worth, specialist, the civilian oversight is satisfied. They're classifying the whole operation at the highest level and moving on. Ghost Widow gets to be dead again, at least officially. And unofficially, Unofficially, there's a legend growing among the operators. A guardian angel in the mountains. A sniper who appears when things look impossible and takes the shots that save lives. Some of them are calling her the Crimson Angel because she always shows up under the red aurora. He smiled slightly. Command doesn't like legends. They're unpredictable, uncontrollable, but the operators love them, so we let it be. Elira nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. Ghost Widow would remain a ghost, but her legend would live on, and maybe that was enough. Dismissed, specialist, and good work. Elira returned to Hub 7, to her monitors and frequencies and endless watch over the frozen valleys. The aurora was quiet tonight, just faint green ribbons dancing across the darkness. But she kept watching anyway, because someone had to. And because somewhere in those mountains, a ghost was watching too. Years would pass. Operations would come and go. Operators would tell stories about the impossible shots and the guardian angel who appeared when the aurora bled crimson. Some would believe. Some would dismiss it as legend. But Elira Hale, senior specialist in threat analysis, would always know the truth. She'd heard the ghost's voice. She'd sent the wind data that made the impossible shot possible. She'd been trusted with secrets that could never be told. And on certain nights, when the aurora flared red and the frequencies whispered with signals from positions that didn't exist, she'd smile and think about the woman who'd chosen exile over compromise, who'd saved dozens of lives from the shadows, who'd become the legend that operators needed when reality wasn't enough. Ghost Widow was dead. Long live Ghost Widow. The end, or perhaps just the beginning of a legend that would outlast them all.